Hello, hello, boys and girls. Today we're giving you a deck tech for Azusa Lost but Seeking that you might have seen some videos on my channel of already. Well, so streamed a couple nights and I played this deck, and so far I can say it is very, very powerful. So if you're interested in making a mono green deck and a very powerful one that's good in both single player and multiplayer without really any tweaks, I would suggest this one. So there's a lot of cards in this deck. Like all decks, they all have 99 plus the commander, so we should get started. Azusa Lost but Seeking is a legendary creature, human monk, and she's a 1/2, so she's not a good beatdown general per se. And she costs 2 and a green, so she costs 3 mana, which is pretty cheap. That's the nice thing about any general that costs 4 mana or less, is that you have an early play almost no matter what. Problem with a commander like, let's say, Azusa, who's 8 mana, or Nicol Bolas, who's like really expensive, or any commander that's 5 or more, is that you don't really have a guaranteed play until turn 5 if you have the land drops. So that's a thing that I like about the cheaper generals, is that you really never feel like you can keep hands that you wouldn't keep with other generals. So what's the theme of Azusa? The theme is you can play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. And that is a very powerful effect, and an effect that can make games very one-sided if that's the kind of thing you like. So we have all of our basic forests over here. I think there's about 36 of them or so. Might be 35. And then there's also Dryad Arbor, which is a forest. So there's quite a few land. We're running 49 land. I've tried more than 49, but I feel like you just don't really need that many. 49, even with 49, you'll get 1 and 2 land hands on your opening draw. That's a lot, because most of the other decks I've made have between 39 and 36. 36 is pretty low, but you can get away with it if you have like a lot of cultivates and things like that. So let's see, what kind of non-basic lands do we have? We have Ancient Tomb, we've got Cavern Souls, which is good because your general is very powerful, and if a blue deck is holding up mana on turn 3, they're pretty much just waiting for you to cast Azusa so they can stop it. Because killing Azusa isn't really effective. The only really way you have to effectively slow her down is to counter her on the way down. Because once she hits play, they can play their 2 lands right away unless they pass priority. So Cavern Souls lets you do that. Also, if you draw it late, it's a good way to cast one of your Eldrazi without getting countered, or Beast, or anything that you want to drop. Temple of the False God. Since we're playing so many land, this is actually quite fine. I don't like it in most decks that aren't, ramping out lands. It just, sometimes you just have temples and 2 lands, and then you can't, this isn't tapped for anything. We've got the fetch lands in green, Wooded Foothills, Windswept Heath, Misty Rainforest. I don't have a Verdant Catacombs. That's one that you could have, I just don't have one, and they're pretty expensive right now, the fetch lands. I should have got them like, 8 months ago, and they were pretty cheap. I think I got Arid Mesa for like 4 tickets, and now it's like up to 9, which is kind of insane. So you can have all the fetch lands, which are actually all pretty good because you do have landfall creatures, and it does thin deck out, and helps you also with Oracle Moldiah and things like that. Tranquil Thicket, we have Cycle Land, Tranquil Thicket, and we have the other one, Slippery Crafts, the Urza's land. These are good because we do have Life from the Loam in our deck, so you can cycle these and get them back. Also, if you're flooded, you just don't want to have any more land, they're a good way to get rid of them. So we have Dryad Arbor, which is pretty good. You can Green Sun Zenith for him on turn 1, so it's like having a mana elf. Also, he can chump block, which is good if you have like Crucible Worlds or Life from the Loam. It's a little risky. I wouldn't play this on turn 1. If you have like 5 lands on your opening hand and a Dryad Arbor is one of them, don't play it turn 1. If they have a Swords of Plowshares, a Lightning Bolt, I mean, maybe if they're mono blue, but even then they could just have it unsummon. Just wait till later. Usually I like to drop Dryad Arbor. After you cast Azusa, you drop Dryad Arbor in another land. That way, if they kill Dryad Arbor, it's not that big of a deal. Just be aware, because I've Stone Rained people turn 1 who cast play Dryad Arbor, and then they usually leave, and just you want to play around that. Dust Bowl, since we have so many land, we can afford to sacrifice one of ours to kill one of theirs, and it's actually very effective against lands like Maze of Ith that can be problemsome, and Cabal Coffers, and things that we don't want our opponents to have, so obviously it's good. Ibugen, so it makes your Eldrazi spells cost 2 less to cast, and then you can search for a colorless creature card. So you could put more colorless creature cards. I do not have Wormcoil in the deck just because I don't think Wormcoil is powerful enough, and like unless you have ways to abuse it, like recurring it or copying it over and over, like kiki-jiki can copy Wormcoil. Other than that, I don't really like Wormcoil, although it is good to have a way to gain life against a lot of aggressive decks. So you could include it. I feel like it sometimes just gets countered or Doombladed. It just doesn't have much of an impact. But you could play Wormcoil if you want. But Ibu can get that. It can also get our duplicate and then our 2 Eldrazi that we play. So I like it. It's a way to, if you have a lot of mana and you're flooded, it's a way to, get creatures out of your deck. Also, if they kill your Eldrazi or get rid of them, somehow this is a way to get them back. So we Miki Koro, so we're going to have a lot more mana than our opponents for the most part. This helps you draw more lands, draw more action. There's also a good interaction with Miki Koro and 4 mana Garruk. This one, you can untap it, so you can use it twice in one turn. You can draw 2 cards extra, which is pretty nice. I mean, you'll be giving your opponents cards, so usually you want to wait till their end step. Unless you're just so flooded that you have so much mana, you can give them extra cards, because most of the time they can only cast 1 and maybe 2 spells a turn, while you can cast pretty much anything that you draw, so it's nice. Reliquary Tower, sometimes you just draw a ton of cards, self-explanatory. Strip Mine, so Crucible, Strip Mine, and Azusa. It's pretty powerful. You're not going to make a lot of friends doing that. If you want to just blow someone out, you can just drop Azusa, Crucible, and you can Strip Mine them 3 times. If you have Oracle will die, you can play 4 land a turn, so you could Strip Mine someone theoretically 4 times in a turn, which is kind of insane because there really isn't another way to do that. That's just so if you want to get, you want to just crush someone, you could do that, but it's not necessary. But these effects are just needed. Pretty much every deck should play Strip Mine, I think, unless you're playing 5 color and you just can't afford it. Or you just count it as a spell at least. And, I don't always be super mean with Strip Mine. There's been matches where I just want to play the game and I won't Strip Mine people when I have Crucible. Thawing Glacier, so Thawing Glacier is pretty good. Also, you can untap it with a Garruk, so you can get the land right away, which is nice. It thins the deck out. It works with Oracle and Moldiah because if you don't have a land on top, you can shuffle and get another land. People say it's really bad, but it's actually pretty good in this deck. And, especially since you can play multiple land a turn, that card gets a lot better. Then you have my Halu. It's fine. You can drop this after Azusa, and you have the 1 green and the Hollow to regenerate her, so you can keep playing land. Sometimes people will Doomblader, sometimes they won't. But, usually if they kill Azusa, you can just cast her again, if you have nothing else better to do. It will slow you down a little bit, but usually the damage has been done if you have 2 land in your hand. Excuse me, I've had some seasonal allergies lately. It's been pretty awful. So, Sensei's Top, obviously it's good. Skull Clamp. Skull Clamp's pretty good in this deck. It's just, you can... excuse me, Jesus. You make some tokens with, like, Rampaging Bailouts, and, your creatures are pretty big, so your opponents are going to want to block them and kill them, and you just send them in with a Skull Clamp. Also, once your elves aren't useful, your Birds of Paradise. It's just a fine card, and it's not the best in this deck, but it's still very good. Soul Ring, obviously. Birds of Paradise is the only... I don't play the Llanowar Elves right now. You just get blown out too hard by Wrath effects, and it's just like another land that doesn't really have a big effect, because I'm not playing the swords. You could play the swords, but I tried them, I think, at first, and I just had to cut them for other cards. Because we're playing so many land, we can't play as many spells as other decks, which is a little bit of a problem, because you have to make cuts for those lands. But Birds is good because, I don't know, why did I pick Birds over the Elves? Did I really have a reason? I mean, it does fly, it can Chump Block Flyers, so that is irrelevant if someone has, like, a Sigarda deck or something. I just like the bird. Anyway, Jiraga Tree Speaker. Very good card. Lets you ramp, obviously, and you just want to be careful if your opponent's holding up mana, because if you level this up and they kill it right away, you just spend your second turn doing nothing, which is not fortunate. So we have Lightning Greaves, good with all of our big fat creatures, especially the Eldrazi. Lightning Greaves is a big threat. Also protects Azusa, obviously, and all the other creatures left from the low. So lets you get 3 target land from your graveyard to your hand, and dredge 3, so you'll put the top 3 cards of your library into your deck. You do have a lot of card draw in this deck, which is pretty good. The good effect with mono green is to have a lot of card draw, because you're going to be basically dropping all your lands onto the battlefield, dropping all your creatures and other things, and you just want to refill your hand, and this helps you do that, especially if you have cycling hands. Cycling lands in the graveyard, or you have Strip Mine, or, things that you sacrifice to Dust Bowl. I don't have a Wasteland. You should probably have a Wasteland. If you have a Wasteland, go for it. When I think it's Tempest is where Wasteland's from. I should have bought one. They were like 26 tickets. I was like, oh, that's kind of expensive. But if I learned anything from Magic Online is that those kind of cards are always cheapest when that set's being drafted. If like sometimes they introduce the older sets, like Tempest or Masters Edition, get those cards while they're being drafted or right after when the price is low, because they slowly climb back up. Like Forcible was down to 70 something tickets and now it's back up to 100. Wasteland was down to 26, 30, and now it's back to 70, which is pretty insane. All the dual lands during Masters Editions all went up. So Life from Loam, obviously good card, and you don't dredge it too much. Sometimes you do when you're just low on land and you want to get more into the graveyard. There's so many land in your in your deck that you're likely to dredge lands. Calling Heart Expedition, it's just like an explosive vegetation, but it's cheaper to cast, and it's one of the ramp spells. I'm not playing a lot of those rampy land spells just because Azusa already does that. You don't really want more effects like that, although they are kind of like card advantage. Like this is a card advantage of some sort, but it's nice to have this. Plus it works very well with fetch lands and other things. Sylvan Library, so this is one of the best cards in the deck. I would not recommend playing Azusa without the Sylvan Library. If you cast this on turn 2, like if they don't deal with it, you're just going to be at an overwhelming advantage. Pretty much pay 8 life right away, because you're going to be emptying your hand really quickly when you're dropping that many land. And the goal is to kind of pretty much beat your opponents before they kill you, before they can kind of stabilize. Sylvan Library lets you do that. I went down to like 16 life with this, and I ended up winning the game very easily just because you're just the biggest threat. You're making all the threats on the battlefield, and people just can't, they can't deal with it. So just be aware that I think around 16 life or so is where you probably will end up if you pay every turn, and then you should be pretty far ahead unless they have a very good hand themselves. So Lotus Cobra. Lotus Cobra is quietly insane in this deck. When you're dropping Azusa, you're dropping a land, so you can make, like, on the turn after you drop Azusa, you can have an absurd amount of mana. Also with the fetch lands that you have in your deck, and it just gets really, really silly. I've had some very, very good Lotus Cobra turns, so I would really recommend playing this card if you have one. And then Raphaelos. Raphaelos is just, I mean, there's a reason this guy is banned as a commander. You cannot have him as your commander, but he's actually in the deck, so if you play him turn 2 and you have a bunch of forests, like, you're gonna do pretty good for yourself. If you have him with Mana Reflection, if you read Mana Reflection over here, if you tap a permanent for mana, it produces twice as much of that mana instead. So if you have, like, let's say 6 lands, 6 forests, and you have Raphaelos, so your forest will tap for 2, so you'll have 12 mana, plus this will tap for 6 till 12, so you'll have 24 mana, which is absurd. It lets you play Eldrazi just by tapping him, and then you have all your land on tap still. It's just insane. So Raphaelos, good card. Who would have known? Crucible. Usually just, I mean, the reason it's in the deck is so you can get your fetch lands back. There's not that many. I don't like to play the, what are they called? I don't like to play any of the panoramas. I don't like to play Evolving Wilds or the other Evolving Wilds functional reprint, or you know what I mean. They put a land into play tapped, any basic land. You can play them if you're more of a budget version, or you just like to play with that card. It does help you shuffle top and stuff, but I don't like them, so I don't. Well, you can. Horn of Greed. This card is very, very good. You're going to be drawing 2 to 3 cards a turn if you have Horn of Greed out, because you're going to most likely draw more lands, so it just lets you get through your deck so fast. Excuse me. The only downside is, your opponent can draw a card too, but unless they have a way to abuse this, then you're going to be so far ahead. So Horn of Greed is very good. I would play Azusa first, and then untap, play Horn of Greed. Hopefully you have more lands, and do that. You don't want to play Horn of Greed and then wait and wait and wait. So Mimic Bat, just good. All your creatures are very powerful. If you've ever played against Mimic Bat and you've seen on the other side of the battlefield, it just makes you very anxious because if something good gets under that Mimic Bat, it's going to be a really big problem for you. So I don't have this in a lot of my decks recently just because I usually want to be doing other things, but since you have so much mana, the 3 mana to activate it isn't really relevant. It's good with your Yavimaya Elder, it's good with all the under the battlefield effect creatures you have. So I would definitely recommend playing it. Eternal Witness just gets you back, gets you back a land, a fetch land, it gets you back harmonized creature that you want to recast, anything, just a very good card. Also good with Mimic Bat. And then Omnath. So Omnath, I haven't done too much with him, but he is definitely a big threat and lets you hold your mana. Like if you don't have much to play, you can hold your mana into Omnath and just beat him down with it. You know, make him a 10/10, and they have a problem, so they have to kill him. Oh, one time he used someone who mind controlled my Omnath. They were playing an Edric deck, and that was pretty much game over because they had green mana as well. And we have Yavimaya Alder, so he's a very good creature. It gets you 2 land if you sacrifice him, and then you draw a card. So he's pretty much what Azusa wants. He wants more land and just card draw. You want to be filling up your hand as quickly as you can. So Birthing Pod. The Birthing Pod chains in this deck are a little awkward. There's nothing after 8, and there isn't that many creatures in between. Just because we're playing so many land, we don't have a lot of creatures in every slot. But it's good enough. It's powerful enough that you just should play it. The 6 mana is really awkward just because it's only duplicate and rampaging bailouts. I've been looking for other 6 drops. There isn't anything that's really impressed me. Because, Primeval Titan's banned. I'm not really sure what else. You could probably let me know what you guys think. What is Tornado? Someone mentioned Tornado Elemental one time to me, and this sounded like it was a pretty good idea. Tornado Elemental. Let's see. 7. It's a 7 drop. So that's a pretty good card you can consider at 7, but it doesn't really solve our 6 mana spot. Anyway, I talk way too much during these videos. Seer's Sundial. It's like a kind of worse Horn of Greed. It's a little awkward because you have to use your mana to activate it, and then once you get the card you want to draw, then you don't have the mana to cast it, but it's just powerful enough that on its own it's going to let you get far ahead. It's really good against control decks who are going to sit there and wait to counter your big spells, because you just sit there dropping land and then drawing cards off it, and then their 1-for-1 counters aren't all that great. Tower of Fortune. So this card is really good. It only costs 4 to cast, but it costs 8 to activate. But you're going to have so much land that's just going to fill your hand up, and they're going to have to deal with it, otherwise they're not going to be able to win. And I just like this card a lot. I'm surprised I don't see it play more often, maybe because it is so expensive, but in this deck it's completely reasonable. Then Harmonize. One of the best cards in the deck. Just fill up your hand as quickly as possible. You're probably just going to draw 3 land, but those are 3 lands you're going to draw in a sequence anyways. And Skyshroud Claim is the only kind of rampy spell I play. When you have like Mana Reflection out and any of the Cage Sun or Vernal Bloom, you tap 2 and you get 2, so it's pretty much free. You could play Explosive Vegetation or the M13 bad version of Skyshroud Claim. It puts them to play tapped. It's like the same exact mana cost. I forgot what it's called. But you can play those if you want. This is probably a little bit harder to get. It's from Nemesis. I actually have an original Skyshroud Claim. Because I actually bought a lot of Nemesis cards and I cracked packs when I was younger. Defense of the Heart. I've never actually gotten this to go off yet. I think I might have cut it at first and I put it back in, but yeah, it's a powerful card. It has to be dealt with. I've cast it once and it got killed. People are going to be scared at a multiplayer table if you play this card, so just keep that in mind. 1v1, it's fine as well. But, yeah, just get 2 big creatures and make them feel bad. Greater Good. Most of your creatures are pretty big, so you're going to sacrifice, draw cards equal to their power, and then discard them at 3 cards. So if you just, sacrifice a Kozilek, you're going to draw 12 cards, discard 3. You might even redraw Kozilek. Which... Can you redraw them? I don't know how the trigger of the stack works, but you're probably in good shape if you sacrifice a Kozilek. Not that you'll need to. Also, it's instant speed, so if someone tries to mind control your creatures, it's a way to play around mind control. Vernal Bloom. So whenever forest taps for mana, you add green to your mana pool, so it basically makes all your forests tap double, including Dryad Arbor. It will make your opponent's forests tap double, so just keep that in mind. It's also a reason to keep your non-basic land count low. And then Garruk. Garruk is a very good card. On tap 2 lands, you lets you ramp, put beasts out, and it gives you an overrun effect if you need to just get through and kill your opponent. And then Drum Hunter. This card is not played that often, and it's actually pretty good. It does tap for 1 colorless, which isn't really that exciting at 4 mana. But if you have, at the end step, you have a creature with 5 or greater, you draw another card. So you just want to keep drawing cards with this deck, because you end up dumping your hand very, very quickly. And I really like this card. I think people should consider it more often because I rarely see it played. I think I've seen it played in like a Mile deck once, but quietly very good and doesn't get played, like I said, 3 times. And then Oracle Moldiah, it gets really, really silly. It just feels so good when you have like 3 lands on top and you drop Oracle and you just play land, and you're just like feeling like the best thing ever, and your opponents are just like, wow. Alright, Garrick, big Garrick, draw cards equal to power. You can -3 him right away, you can +1 him. The best thing is to +1 him and then -3 him so he still sticks around. But if you're desperate for cards, you can just draw 6, sometimes even more cards the turn you play him. And he's a big threat. I've never ultimated him. He's never. I mean, by the time that he gets down and does his thing, usually your opponents are pretty much dead. Acidic Slime speaks for itself. Just an evergreen. It's an evergreen card in green, and it's just good at what it does. Trades for any creature. Good with Mimic Vat. Watch out for people. People do play a lot of clones, so it is a little awkward in some clones your Acidic Slime. That's kind of the problem with all of our creatures, is that clones are very good against them. And then Genesis. So I know some people really don't like Genesis, because unless you have a way to abuse them. Like, we don't have Survival of the Fittest in here. I was thinking of putting it in, but I actually forgot to borrow it. And then, the deck doesn't really need it. There's not that many creatures. Also, it is kind of like a Wrath Insurance, and it does hit for 4, but you can also use it with Birthing Pod. So, it's fine. I haven't really got to play with it too much, but I like it. And then Indrik Stomp Howler. It's kind of a big fatty, like a second Acidic Slime effect. It does not kill land, and it is not a May ability. So make sure that if you do cast him that you can target your opponent's things, because otherwise you'll have to kill your own things, and that is never fun. Cage Sun doubles only our mana. Cage Sun's not that hard to cast. Gives your green creatures +1/+1 and doubles your mana, so that's what you do. Make sure you click on the right mana if you played online. Duplicate, kind of one of the only removal spells that we have. Someone plays a pro green creature with like a sword or something. This is a way to get through it. Also, it's just a way to deal with flyers. We don't have many ways to deal with flyers, which is really kind of the weak point of how I built the deck. And then Mana Reflection. We already talked about this. Just an awesome card. Doubles your mana for everything. Soul Rings, a colorless land, Borfellos, Forest. Just very, very powerful. And it's very lucky that you can play this card, because it only affects you. And then Rampaging Bailoffs. This card is silly. When you're playing as many land as you do in this deck, you're going to keep drawing land. If you have Oracle Moldiah, or if you have Azusa out, you can just put 2 or 3 beasts into play at once. He isn't very good against Wrath effects, since his ability doesn't really do much except make creatures. But he's a big enough threat that your opponent's going to have to deal with it, otherwise they will die. And then Boundless Realms. Oh, that's the other land we play. So another nice thing is that can happen is if you have a Rampaging Bailoffs and you draw Boundless Realms, then you can make a lot of creatures. Basically, you can get all the forests out of your deck at some point if you cast this, which is really nice. And then Tooth and Nail. You've seen this in one of my videos where I had to deal with a Sigarda and a Tooth and Nailed out the Sylvan Primordial and something else, Duplicant, which was pretty awesome. This was just a good card. You can just also put out 2 Eldrazi, and usually when the game, people will usually just concede because there's not really a good way to deal with those 2 things. Karn goes into about every deck. 7 mana, Vindicate any permanent and +4 him, and he's a 10 toughness or 10 loyalty thing. It's hard to deal with. And it's really easy to cast him. I've cast him, I think, on turn 2 before with this deck. It's really silly. Avenger of Zendikar. Also very good with Boundless Realms and your fetch lands and Oracle Moldiah. Landfall is very powerful in this deck. When you're playing 2, 3, 4 lands a turn, then all the landfall cards get so good. And then Sylvan Primordial. It's a 6/8. And it has reach, and when this card first came out, people didn't realize it had reach, and they would just chump attack into it, and it would just eat their creatures, which is good. People have caught on. I see people try to attack and then realize and then stop, which is always kind of funny. It's really good in multiplayer too, since you can kill 3 things and then get 3 forests. And that's why this deck is so good. It just doesn't really need targeted removal for the most part. Terastodon. Oh, Terastodon. This card never feels fair. You're just killing 3 of anything, 3 of their best non-land or non-creature permanents, and you're giving them 3 elephants. Oh, and you put a Skullclaimer with Terastodon, and they attack into their 3 elephants. They triple block, lose all 3 of their elephants, and you just draw 2 more cards. So he's just really good. But I really hate Terastodon. Be aware that someone could bribery this right out of your deck, and I can't tell you how many times I've bribery Terastodon of a green creature's deck, green opponent's deck, and they concede right after. Or if they cast Terrasset on me and I'm pretty low and I Phantasmal Image their Terrasset, and then I kind of slowly climb back and then clone their Terrasset again, and then they can't get back into the game. Like, that happened to me against a Reanimator deck. I won that game, but I hate Terrasset. I mean, if you don't want to play Terrasset, you don't have to. He's just very, very good. But if someone briberies Terrasset and kills me with it, then that's my fault for playing it. Vorinclex, yeah, people really hate this card, which is funny. I mean, I understand his effect. When I've played against him, with like when I was playing kiki-jiki a lot and like Grand Arbiter and things like that, like he always felt oppressive, but he never felt like your opponent was doing anything too broken for the most part. Just because, yeah, the untap thing is annoying, but usually if you find a way to deal with him, usually you can recover. He does get fun with like Mana Reflection, and you can just get all the mana you want. Very good with your Genesis Wave and Court of Calling. Woodfall Primus. So he destroys any non-creature permanent, and he persists. So that's pretty relevant. Someone briberies this out of your deck, and then it dies. You'll get it back, which is pretty nice. Just be aware if someone does clone this, they will get the persist trigger, so it will come back and kill something else, probably, or come back as a clone of any other thing. So here's our big slot. We have Genesis Wave. I've Genesis Waved for like 40 or something before, and it's just fun. You have to be careful you don't deck yourself with this, because you can. Sometimes you'll have to cast it for less than you actually can if you have a ton of mana. Green Sun Zenith, it's flexible, gets you any of the creatures you want. Sometimes you get an Oracle Moldiah, sometimes you'll get Raphellos or Dried Arbor, Woodfall Primus, or Terrasset. Just a very, very versatile, good card. The reason this was banned in Modern, because it's just too versatile. Court of Calling. I like this card. The thing is you can't F8 when you have this card, because since your creatures can reduce the cost, and it's an instant, you can't actually pass priority unless you actually pass priority, which is kind of funny. But yeah, that's a very good card, and in this will get any creature, not just green creatures, so you can get your Eldrazi with it if you want, or your duplicate. And then we've got Ulamog, the big bad Ulamog, 11 mana, Annihilator 4, indestructible. The only way to get rid of him is exile him, pretty much. And yeah, he just brings the beat. It always feels good to cast Ulamog, and same with Kozilek. I mean, he draws you 4. He's not indestructible, so he will die to removal. But if he dies, he goes back into your graveyard, and you can just get him again. So there you have it. That's pretty much the deck. You know, this isn't. I'm not saying this is the perfect way to build a deck. It's kind of just the creatures that I wanted to. I didn't copy anyone's list. I think the deck does need a little bit of a way to deal with flyers. I would probably put Tornado Elemental in it if you really wanted it. It is a powerful effect, and we don't have any flyers except for our birds. Also, you could play like Windstorm or something like that if you wanted to, or Hurricane. And we have Craterhoof Behemoth. I think this deck should have a Craterhoof Behemoth just as a win condition. I know some people said when this card first came out, they just had to cut it from their deck because it just felt like way too easy to win. I mean, this is one of the best green creatures ever printed. I remember when it first came out on Avacyn Restored, it just didn't have a deck, and it was like a ticket, and I was like, I should have just bought one, but now they're like 7, 8 tickets. They were up to like 12, 15 tickets because it was being played so much in Standard. But this card it's absurd. You're going to have a flood of creatures with all your tokens, Rampaging Bailots, and it just pushes through the damage. So it should probably be on the deck. I just don't have one, and I forgot to borrow it. So anyway, let me know if you have any questions or comments of what you would change. Maybe 49 land is too many. I don't really think that it is. I think kind of 49 land is... I've been playing this deck quite a bit. I think 49 land is kind of where it's at. You do have to fetch some thin a little bit, and I don't play the Cultivates, Rampant Growths. Some people, I've seen them play those, but I think you'll get super flooded if you use your spell slots for those. You should just play more land. I'd rather play more land than play Rampant Growth. You'd rather cast them like Sylvan Library or Caster General in turn 3. So what do I feel about this deck? I feel like this deck is about as unfair as I thought it would be. It's kind of one of those decks you really don't care what your opponent's playing. Unless they're playing like something akin to my Urtai deck with all the counters in the world, you should pretty much be able to beat anything they can do. I literally played against the deck that I had a Cavern of Souls in my hand, and I wanted to cast Azusa, and he was playing a blue deck. I think he was playing mono blue. So he was tapped out, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna... He played a Soul Ring, and he was tapped out, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna play Azusa. I had a Birds of Paradise turn 1. Birds does help you play Azusa turn 2, by the way, which is pretty much why I have it versus the other. I mean, it's the only one I have, but it's a good effect, good enough effect that you should have at least one drop accelerant. So, sorry, I went off my tangent there. So I didn't put the Cavernous Souls into play because I wanted to save the Cavernous Souls naming ability for like maybe a big spell I drew later. Because he was playing against a blue deck, and I'd want to maybe get my Rampaging Baloths or Sylvan Primordial into play underneath the counter. Well, he force-of-willed my Azusa and then pitched a Pact of Negation. And I was just like, wow, I could have just stopped that from happening. It let him, and then he like played Rewind on my next spell. I think it was like Oracle Moldiah or something like that, or I think it was like a Vernal Bloom. Anyway, I ended up winning that game. It's really hard to sit back on counters all day against Azusa. I mean, unless she gets flooded or something, you're just going to be able to stop all that madness from really affecting you. And then Wraths. Wraths can be a problem. Most of the time you lose because you had a bad hand or drew badly, but yeah, I like Azusa a lot. Or to flyers, like full trunk commanders that fly. But I like her a lot. Kind of play the deck. This is one of the only decks I've played in both multiplayer and 1v1 without any really tweaks at all. This is what I'll play for either version. I don't play Beast Within, Desert Twister, those kind of targeted removals. Beast Within you could play as well. I mean, there's different ways you could take it. This is the core of the deck. I've been talking for a long time. Hopefully you like the video. Fortunately, I will not be posting videos about the next week. I'm going to Las Vegas starting tomorrow. I have a flight 5:56 local time here, so I have to wake up at like 3. This might be the last video for like about a week. I might upload some videos from Vegas. Also, my puppy I'm actually going to get the day after I come back from Vegas. He'll be 8 weeks old. So maybe I'll upload a video with him and his litter. It's pretty cute. If you guys like puppies, you'll like the video. So Vegas for me. Sorry, you'll have to be royal free. No one will be there to troll. You'll have to just go back to my old videos, watch me trolling people. So thanks for watching. Maybe I'll upload one more tonight. Maybe not. Who knows? And have a nice day. Thanks for being my subscribers. Bye.